What's up everyone, Master Fox here again, and today I'm going to bring you another $100 budget deck, and the deck this time is Qliphorts. So I'm not going to lie, this $100 budget deck was actually the hardest budget deck I think I've had made so far, and a lot of it has to do with some of the required cards in Qliphorts being pretty expensive, like Scout and Sacrifice. Those two are already $10, $15, and then $10 a piece, and you definitely need 3 Scout, and if you're going to run Qliphorts, you're also going to need 3 Sacrifice. But in this deck, I had to sacrifice 2 Sacrifice just because of the budget reasons. But I think the only way to run a budget version of Qliphorts is to run them as a hybrid with the Monarchs, using them as kind of a tribute engine, because they function very well as the tribute engine, because that's how they work normally in their own deck. And so if you combine them with the Monarchs, the deck can actually work well as a Monarch engine. So for the deck itself, I'm running 3 Qliphort Scout, obviously. I'm running 3 Carrier and 3 Helix, mainly because these 3 are your these 2 different monsters I run 3 of because they are your main tribute fodder. They have effects that activate when they are tributed, so when you tribute them for a Monarch, you get Helix or Carrier's effect as well as the Monarch's own effect. So you're going to get a plus off of the tributed monster as well as your Monarch. So this combos very well with the Monarchs themselves. I'm running Grandmark, the Mega Monarch, as I guess kind of the boss of the deck. Originally I was running Towers, but Towers having a 3 tribute requirement, it was kind of difficult to pull off in the deck. Although it was really effective if you did pull it off, I think it's too hard to pull off consistently enough, and Grandmark can be just as effective if you use him at the right time. Plus he's searchable with Tenacity, and you can also give him pretty good immunity off of March of the Monarchs, which is also searchable. And he goes really well with the deck because everything that you're going to be tributing is basically Earth, and so you'll be able to at least get his last effect to draw 1 card, and his other effect is just kind of a bonus. And the fact that he can be tributed by tributing 1 already tribute summoned monster means you can summon him off any of the Monarchs, or even off any of these guys if you tribute for either Carrier or Helix. And I'm running 2 Ryza and 3 Caius. So this is pretty standard for Monarch decks. I'm running 3 Caius just because I find banishing to be a bit more effective than returning to the top of the deck. But you can run any ratio of these 2 Monarchs or any other Monarchs you really want. But these 2 are obviously the best Monarchs to run. I'm running 2 Performapal Trampolinks. This is to combine with your Scout as a secondary scale, so that you can pendulum summon if you need to, and you can also bounce Scout and get multiple searches. And this is really powerful, especially early game, to get your deck really rolling. I run 1 Laser Clip. This is because it's searchable by Scout, and it allows you to get an extra summon of your Qli monsters, so that you can use your extra summon on your Qli monsters, and then you can use your regular normal summon to tribute them off to summon a Monarch, or you can just, if you have 2 Qli monsters in your hand, you can just summon 1 and then tribute that for the other one, and then you get the tributed effect. And so it gives you a double summon, and you can use it proactively. And I'm running 1 March of the Monarchs and 1 Return of the Monarchs. So in this deck, the budget is all tied up in the main deck, and so I'm not running any cards in the extra deck at all. So the second restriction doesn't really matter so much. It'll stop you from pendulum summoning, but you don't really need to pendulum summon so much, and you can also activate it after you have pendulum summon and then you tribute summon your monster anyways, and you still get the protection from March of the Monarchs. And for Return of the Monarchs, you would have to pendulum summon first, and then you tribute your monsters, and then you can get its effect. But both of these are still very powerful cards in this deck. I only run one of each because they're searchable by tenacity. Dark Hole and Book of Moon, these are staples. I'm running Book of Moon because it has high utility, and it also can combo with Grandmark. I wanted to run something like Book of Eclipse or Swords of Concealing Light, but Book of Eclipse is like a $5 card right now, and so obviously it's too much for the budget of this deck, which is I'm already pushing the budget pretty hard. And so I'm running 2 Hidden Armory, 1 Snatch Steal, and only 1 Sacrifice. So I know this is going to be controversial, running only 1 Sacrifice, but Sacrifice is a $10 card, as you can tell, and so I couldn't really afford to run more than 1 in this deck if I wanted to run it this way. So in order to compensate for that, I am running 2 Hidden Armory. So Hidden Armory allows me to grab back Sacrifice and essentially keep recycling that Sacrifice, as well as search it from the deck itself, so that the deck isn't so reliant on your scout searches. And this frees up your scout to search for anything else that you would need. And I know it costs you your normal summon, but that's why I run Escalation of the Monarchs, which I'll get into later. And Hidden Armory is really good because you can recycle Snatch Steal too, which works really well in this deck because you can Snatch Steal their monster, tribute it, offer a Monarch, and then you can recycle Snatch Steal again with Hidden Armory and just rinse and repeat. I'm running 2 Summoner's Art. This is obvious. This is to search for Scout. Only running 2 because of budget constraints. 3 Tenacity of the Monarchs. So this is a really important card in this deck. It allows you to search for all of your Monarch support, and the most important one is the Monarch Stormforth. It lets you get this card, and especially since you're going to have a card that you can tribute in your hand when you activate Tenacity. You can activate this card, search for Monarch Stormforth, activate Stormforth, tribute an opponent's monster for one of your Monarchs, or even any of your carriers or your helixes. And so Tenacity is really good for that. You can also search for Return of the Monarchs and March of the Monarchs, and you can also search for Escalation of the Monarchs as well. And how Escalation works is it lets you tribute summon your Monarch cards during your opponent's turn. So this is why Hidden Armory may not hurt you so much, because if you have a monster on board and you activate Hidden Armory, you can tribute summon for it during your opponent's turn. And a really good play with this is you activate Hidden Armory and then you get Snatch Steal. Then you Snatch Steal an opponent's monster, and you could either use Tenacity to search for Escalation, or if you already have Escalation set during your opponent's turn, you can activate Escalation and tribute their monster and get a Monarch, and then get your Monarch's effect off. They'll still gain the 1,000 life points since you have to do this in their main phase, but it's still a really strong combo, and Escalation is a powerful form of disruption. It's almost on the level of Artifact Moraltech, if you want to think of it that way, because it lets you essentially banish and spin cards on your opponent's turn. And if you're tributing your carriers or your helixes for it too, you're going to get a bounce or a spell and trap pop for your tributed summon. And so I'm running 3 Vanity's Emptiness. This is staple. It doesn't really hurt the deck at all outside of Pendulum Summoning, which this deck doesn't do much of anyways. And I'm running a single copy of Climate Change. This card is searchable by Scout, so you only really need 1. And then since you're going to be tributing a lot of your Qli monsters, this lets you recycle them back to your hand to be reused as tribute fodder or just as regular monsters. And so this is the main deck It's a decent Monarch deck. I didn't go for the stun route because Vanity's Fiend is the one that I would be using, because Majesty's Fiend is like a $25–$30 card, and so that wouldn't be a really viable option to run budget Qliphorts with. And obviously this deck isn't tier 1 viable, but if you wanted to run Qliphorts and you only had a $100 budget, this is a really good way to run them as a Monarch engine. And here, a couple of cards that I have here in the side deck are cards that I was considering. As I said before, I was considering Towers in place of Grandmark. You can swap these two because Towers is pretty cheap and Grandmark is pretty cheap too. And Towers is better if you have more sacrifices to run, because then you would only have to tribute 2 monsters for him. But I found in playing around with this deck that it's kind of hard to get that off, especially since I only run 1 sacrifice. What you could do is you could drop 2 hidden armories, and then you could run a second sacrifice, and then you can just run another filler card like MST or something. But I opted for the 2 hidden armories because it adds added utility with Snatch Steal. And then you can run either the other 2 Qli 2 tribute monsters. These cards would work just like Grandmark, but I didn't run them obviously because of budget constraints. If I had more in terms of the budget, I would probably run Disc, to be honest, just for the damage potential. And then obviously if you have more in your budget, run Summoners, the 3rd Summoners art, and Raigeki is another staple. Swap it out for a Dark Hole. Sacrifice, max it out as much as your budget can afford. And these two, as I mentioned before, I was thinking of teching them in just to combo with Grandmark, but if you run them as a one-of, it's not really going to be that effective. But if you run more of them, it could be useful. Book of Eclipse especially as a OTK stopper. These are just other alternatives that I was considering. None of them are really, I found really to be that effective in the deck. And Skill Drain I didn't run because you want each to get your Monarch effects off, and that would kind of conflict with it if you ran lots of copies of Skill Drain. So that's why I didn't run it. And so the deck overall costs just a smidge over $100. I'm sorry I couldn't keep it under $100, but it only came out to be $100.53. So that's not that much more than $100. It's only 50 cents more actually. And you probably have some of these common cards anyways that would make up for that 50-cent cost. And if you have any extra deck monsters at all, you could add them in and run them. And so that's it for this budget Qliphort Monarch deck. I hope you guys like this deck, and please subscribe. Thank you.